My name is Serena, and if you had asked me a year ago what family meant, I would have answered without hesitation. Family meant showing up. It meant sacrificing. It meant putting the people you loved ahead of yourself, even when it hurt. I believed that with my entire heart. Now, if someone asked me the same question, my answer would be very different. Because sometimes the people who call themselves your family don't see your love as a gift. They see it as a resource, something to use until there's nothing left. I learned that lesson because of my younger sister. And because of one email that changed everything. I was 34 years old, a financial consultant, and the single mother of the sweetest little girl in the world. Her name was Nora. She had chestnut curls that bounced whenever she ran, freckles scattered across her tiny nose, and the biggest brown eyes I'd ever seen. She was 6 years old and somehow managed to make every difficult day worth surviving. People often asked if raising her alone was hard. Of course it was. There were nights when I stayed awake worrying about bills. There were mornings when I worked before sunrise so I could leave early enough to pick her up from school. There were birthdays when I smiled through my exhaustion because she deserved a mother who celebrated every moment. But I never regretted choosing her. Never. Her father disappeared before she was born. He promised he would come back after figuring things out. That was almost 7 years ago. The last thing I ever received from him was a text message wishing me luck. Since then, it had always been just the two of us. And honestly, that was enough. My younger sister, Diane, couldn't have been more different. She was 30, beautiful, confident, charming. She had a way of entering every room like she belonged there. People naturally paid attention to her. She loved expensive restaurants, designer handbags, luxury vacations, and social media photos that looked effortless but usually took 20 minutes to stage. Growing up, everyone adored Diane. Our parents called her their little princess. If she wanted dance lessons, they found the money. If she wanted a new car, they somehow made it happen. If she made a mistake, someone else always fixed it. I wasn't jealous. At least, that's what I kept telling myself. I was the responsible daughter. The dependable one, the girl who earned scholarships instead of asking for tuition, the daughter who worked part-time through college, the sister who always said yes. Some families have a golden child, our family certainly did. And it wasn't me. When Diane called me one rainy Thursday evening, I answered while helping Nora finish a dinosaur puzzle. "Serena," she squealed, "I have news." I laughed. "You sound excited." "I got engaged." I nearly dropped my coffee. "What?" She laughed again. "Clifford proposed." I stood up immediately. "Oh my goodness. Diane, congratulations." She launched into every detail: the candle-lit rooftop, the violinist, the custom-designed diamond ring, the photographers hiding behind flower arrangements. It sounded like something from a romantic movie. I was genuinely happy for her. She had been dating Clifford for just over a year. He came from an incredibly wealthy family that owned several luxury hotels across the country. He was polite whenever we met, although a little distant. Still, he seemed to love Diane. And she certainly loved the life that came with him. A week later, Diane invited me to lunch. The restaurant overlooked the harbor. Everything from the chairs to the silverware looked expensive. She barely waited until our drinks arrived. "Need your help." I smiled. "With what?" "The wedding." I laughed. "I thought you were going to ask me to be maid of honor." She hesitated, actually hesitated. "Oh, I already asked Madison." Madison, her college roommate, someone she'd known for 4 years. I'd been her sister for 30. For just a second, something inside me stung, but I pushed it away. "That's okay. I still want you involved." "Of course." She reached across the table. "Always been amazing with organizing things." "I trust you." Then she lowered her voice, and honestly, weddings are expensive. There it was, the real reason. At first, it seemed harmless. She asked if I could recommend a florist. Then she wondered whether I knew a good photographer. Eventually, she asked if I could cover the deposit for the venue. "It'll only be temporary," she promised. "We'll reimburse you." I believed her. Why wouldn't I? She was my sister. The deposit became the catering payment. The catering became the musicians. The musicians became custom invitations. Every month there seemed to be another emergency, another unexpected expense, another promise that repayment would come later. It never did. One Saturday afternoon, I sat at my kitchen table reviewing my finances while Nora colored pictures beside me. She looked up. "We going to the beach this summer?" I stopped writing. I had forgotten. Months earlier, I had promised we'd spend a week by the ocean. I smiled anyway. "We'll see, sweetheart." She nodded happily. "I want to build the biggest sandcastle." That night, after she fell asleep, I quietly canceled our vacation plans. The money paid for Diane's wedding flowers instead. I told myself we'd go next year. Family comes first. That's what I believed. As the months passed, the total kept climbing. $5,000, $12,000, $23,000, $38,000. Eventually, I stopped adding it up because seeing the number made me uncomfortable. Instead, I transferred the money through a family trust I managed professionally. It kept everything organized. Every payment required my authorization. Technically, the funds still belonged to me until vendors completed their contracts. That detail would become important later, although I didn't know it then. Nora loved hearing about the wedding. Will Aunt Diane wear a princess dress? I'm sure she will. I wear sparkly shoes. If you want. She clapped her hands. I'm going to dance all night. I laughed. You probably will. She had already decided she wanted to scatter flower petals, even though she wasn't officially part of the ceremony. Every few days, she'd practice walking slowly across the living room while tossing imaginary flowers. Watching her made me smile. She was so excited. She loved her aunt. She believed her aunt loved her just as much. Children rarely imagine adults can disappoint them. One afternoon, I visited Diane at the enormous estate where she planned to marry. Workers were hanging crystal chandeliers beneath a glass pavilion. Gardeners trimmed hedges into perfect geometric shapes. Delivery trucks came and went every few minutes. The entire event looked more like a royal celebration than a wedding. Diane walked beside me holding a clipboard. We're expecting around 300 guests. That's incredible. She smiled proudly. Most of Clifford's family friends are influential. She said that word carefully, influential. As though it mattered more than kind. She continued talking about politicians, investors, celebrities, and executives. Almost everyone she mentioned had money. I noticed she never once talked about love. Later that evening, I finally met Clifford's parents. His mother wore pearls that probably cost more than my car. His father shook my hand politely. So you're Serena. I am. Diane tells us you're in finance. I am. He smiled. Excellent profession. Before I could answer, Diane interrupted. My sister is wonderful. She laughed nervously. She's always working. Something about her tone felt strange, as though she wanted the conversation to end before it became too personal. I ignored the feeling. Weeks turned into months. The closer the wedding came, the busier everyone became. My weekends disappeared. I reviewed contracts, confirmed vendors, resolved scheduling conflicts, negotiated prices, answered phone calls at midnight. Sometimes I wondered whether I was acting as the wedding planner instead of the bride's sister. But Diane always thanked me. Or at least she usually did. That seemed enough. Until it wasn't 3 days before everything fell apart. Nora ran into my bedroom holding a piece of paper. Mommy, what is it? I drew Aunt Diane. The drawing showed 2 smiling stick figures holding balloons. One was wearing a giant white dress. The smaller figure had curly hair. In bright pink crayon, she'd written me and Aunt Diane. I hugged her tightly. It's beautiful. Do you think she'll like it? I'm sure she will, she grinned. I'm going to give it to her at the wedding. I kissed the top of her head. I think she'd love that. Looking back now, those words break my heart. Because I had no idea that less than 24 hours later, my inbox would contain an email that would destroy everything I believed about my sister. And once I finished reading it, there would be no going back. The next morning, after dropping Nora off at school, I opened my laptop to check the final wedding updates. At the top of my inbox was an email from Diane titled, "Wedding logistics, please read carefully." I expected a schedule. Instead, I found betrayal. Buried in the email was a section about Nora. We've decided it's best if Nora doesn't attend the wedding. She's energetic, and we don't want any distractions during such an important event. My heart sank. My 6-year-old daughter, the little girl who had spent months talking about the wedding, had just been uninvited. Then the email became even worse. Diane asked me not to mention that I was a single mother or discuss our family's struggles because Clifford's wealthy relatives expected a certain image. She wanted me to hide who I was. I stared at the screen in disbelief. A few minutes later, Diane called. "It's just one day," she said. "Please don't make this difficult." "You're asking me to leave my daughter behind because she doesn't fit your perfect picture," I replied. "It's about appearances." Those 3 words told me everything. I ended the call without another word. That afternoon, I picked Nora up from school and took her out for ice cream. She smiled and asked, "What dress should I wear to Aunt Diane's wedding?" I forced a smile. "I'm not sure yet, sweetheart." Inside, my heart was breaking. Later that evening, I reviewed every wedding payment I had made through the family trust: the venue, the catering, the flowers, the music, luxury transportation. Nearly everything had been paid for with my money, and every payment still required my final authorization. For the first time, I asked myself one simple question: why was I paying for a wedding where my own daughter wasn't welcome? The next day, I met Diane one last time. She insisted Clifford's family expected perfection and that Nora's presence might create unnecessary questions. I finally realized the painful truth. She didn't value me. She valued what I could provide. As I drove home, years of sacrifice suddenly made sense. I had mistaken being needed for being loved. The following morning, I logged into the trust account. I looked at Nora's drawing on the refrigerator, remembered the words unconventional distraction, and calmly withdrew every pending payment authorization. I didn't argue. I didn't seek revenge. I simply stopped funding an event where my daughter wasn't welcome. Then I booked 2 tickets to Lisbon. If Nora couldn't spend the weekend celebrating someone who didn't appreciate her, we'd make our own unforgettable memories instead. What I didn't know was that, while our plane crossed the Atlantic, my sister's dream wedding was already beginning to collapse. The end.